Welcome to an expansive life conversation with results architect Sande Golgart. Our guest today is Chris Hauth. Chris is a former Olympic swimmer, professional triathlete, and ultra-endurance athlete turned high-performance coach and founder of AIMP Coaching. Chris shares his philosophy that everyone is an athlete, not just in sport, but in life. Whether you're chasing podiums or purpose, he reveals how endurance training becomes a metaphor for mastering the mind, finding balance, and expanding your capacity for growth. Your journey to realignment from fear to freedom starts now. Live an expansive life.
Wow. What an amazing day do we have planned. I am so thrilled to welcome Chris Hauth to the show. I have known Chris personally now for 1 year, probably to the day. And it's not often you meet one person that has such a profound impact on your life, but from the books that Chris has recommended, both of which changed the trajectory of my life and how I looked at life, to the training, to the experiences we've had together, both in the Grand Canyon at 29029. I couldn't be more pleased and more excited to dive into today's conversation. So, Chris, welcome to the show. And I look forward to what promises to be an amazing hour for everybody who gets to share and listen to your insights.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. It's our pleasure. So, as always, we start the show. Everyone's got really busy lives. We take just a few seconds to do 3 box breaths, just to make sure that we're fully arrived. We all have so much going on. So, I'll lead the box breaths and then we'll dive into questions and start to get some of your insights. So, if everyone wants to participate or take the opportunity not to participate, go ahead and close your eyes. And we'll do a count of 4 on the inhale, then we'll hold for 4, and then we'll exhale for 8. We'll do 3 of those, and then we'll get started. So on my count, inhale through the nose for 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And exhale for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And inhale 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. And then exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And last one, in 2, 3, 4. And hold 2, 3, 4. And big exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, we have arrived. So, Chris, I can't wait to talk to you today just to get your insights on the art of doing hard things. So, you've competed at the highest level as an Olympic athlete in the 92 Barcelona Games as a swimmer. You've trained some of the most elite athletes around the world, not the least of which, Rich Roll, who has an entire chapter dedicated to you in his book. But you've also done a lot with what I'll call, with no offense, like everyday people like myself, to do hard things and to make sure that, we get through them safe and have an incredible experience. What is the art of doing hard things? Why is it important, from your perspective, on doing hard things or getting out in nature and challenging ourselves?
Well, I mean, there's so much there that we could unpack, but the main thing is it's the exposure, right? It's the exposure not only to nature, which is limited these days, but the exposure to your inner landscape. And so often when we're out in nature, when we're out doing hard things, and we're doing things out of our comfort zone, what really unfolds is this frequency. And I'm not talking about some harmonic frequency. I'm talking about our ability to listen deeper within ourselves. And things come up that we didn't even know we were contemplating or thinking about, the subconscious. there's a lot in there when it comes to ego and small mind, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But just like the famous philosophers used to go for long walks to do their thinking, and we sort of do the same thing either on walks or in the shower, or ideas spontaneously come to us. It's when the mind is busy doing another activity like walking, or, you know, not even cycling or in a strength room. You can't, because you're paying attention to the details there. You have to really be able to turn off the mind. And nature allows for that because there's no synchronicity to it. It's all non-recognizable patterns. And therefore, it allows the higher consciousness, the subconscious, to sort of open up. And that's the beauty of being out there. When we're doing hard things, the ego goes away because it's hard. We're recognizing that. We no longer fight it. And we're more expansive. We're more open to taking in the full experience, whether it's externally or internally.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I've learned and been taught, over the past year is that a lot of us want to live expansive lives. We want to do more in life. But two things really prevent that. We become in this dis-ease with the way things are. So we're not present. We're thinking about a future that doesn't exist that we think we want. But we also don't take the time as humans by nature to create the space necessary to expand into. It's hard to just sit still. It's hard for a lot of people just to sit still for those box breaths.
Correct.
But without that space, you don't have the opportunity to welcome in new ways of thinking, new perspective. So where do you see that? Some examples that you've seen when you're working with athletes where they welcome in, or even your own experiences where you're hit with some new enlightened thoughts that you never could have welcomed in sitting at a desk, typing away on your computer.
Well, then there's a few questions in those questions, so I'll try
Yeah.
to knock them out there.
Okay.
Well, one is, I think it takes training. It takes practice. Whether, like you just mentioned, sitting still, it's not something that comes easily to us. And quite honestly, it's not something our culture and our society and how we do things really allows for, right? We're constantly distracted. We're constantly asked to be doing something. And if you're not doing something, you're not a air quotes doer, you're almost looked down upon in today's go get 'em society. So one, it takes practice in sitting still, in listening to yourself and listening to your thoughts. And there's many ways that people go into that, whether it's eventually meditation, whether it's eventually what I call written meditation, i.e. journaling. Those types of things are a vehicle to help practice that. But the harder part is first that awareness and the understanding is like, you know what? I'm going to sit in this discomfort of sitting still, of being quiet, of listening to my thoughts, even if there's nothing there. It can take weeks to sort of realize, oh, not having any, beautiful thoughts or some sort of enlightening thought is completely normal. You can't expect it. Otherwise, you're back into expectations and performance. And that's not how this type of expansive thinking and, that kind of work goes. So for me, a lot of that came with a big switch in my life of moving more outdoors into adventures, trail running. Um, Even in my triathlon days, I was too performance oriented. I was focused on the finish line, not the experience. The experience was merely a vehicle, again, to perform better on event day, whatever the event was, whether it was, adventure racing, whether it's swimming, whether it was triathlon, whether it's running a marathon, whatever it was. And as soon as I stepped out of that into just self-curated adventures, finding myself out in the woods, that was my daily practice. It was starting to recognize, oh, it takes about 20, 30 minutes of just walking, running, hiking to open the portal. And you're not even paying attention to it. You're listening to, let's say, music or a podcast while you're running. And next thing you notice, your thoughts are all of a sudden not even listening to what you have playing in your ears. You're thinking on your own and you're going through things or whatever comes up. And that's where it begins. That's
Yeah.
where it begins. And you have to actually, and again, it takes practice there because you can't then turn off the music or turn off the podcast or the audiobook because that will disrupt the flow. You sort of have to stay in this no man's land of being willing to, okay, I got to keep the conditions the same so that I can just continue to awaken that. It goes away, it comes back. But the more time you spend in it, the more you improve your ability to hear it. And that's the fun, right? It becomes
Yeah.
a curiosity. There's days where I go out now, and many of my athletes do, and I'll go into the second part of that question, where I'm like, what will come up today? I'm curious. I'm sort of excited. What will happen besides the training benefit, besides that I'm out in nature, besides the health and fitness? It's also this. Well, what will I discover today? What will I learn today? What will I learn about myself today, or about something else? You know, so that's the fun. And when you go through this with enough athletes, I've been doing this for 25 years now, coaching endurance athletes and working with them. And it's exactly like you say, allowing the space for them to come to this insight themselves. These are not things, these questions, this desire, this curiosity does not come by me telling anybody what will come up, how it works, where it works, when it works. It has to be on their own volition and their own aha moment where they felt it themselves. And from there, we then start the work. And like I always say to a lot of my clients and people I meet, endurance is merely a vehicle to have that deeper conversation. It's merely a vehicle to create that space of what did you hear? What did you notice? What are you starting to recognize? And then it goes deeper into questions like, well, how does that make you feel? And who do you want to be? And what are you learning from that? What does that mean to you? Right? It's not necessarily therapy, but it is my responsibility as a mentor, as a coach. Coach comes with sort of the whistle around my neck in like vision, right? Like, and just barking orders. But more as a guide, as a mentor to ask the right questions of, all right, well, what do we want to do with this? And most importantly, and this is what I call coaching, how do you want to feel? Right? A lot of us consider sport and even professional life as these outcomes, right? And of course, there's more and more talk of the journey as well. But at the end of the day, how do we want to feel? Do I want to feel expansive? Do I want to feel I'm standing on good ground? Do I want to feel like I'm giving energy to the world and my loved ones around me? Do I want to feel like I'm contributing like to society, to my little community? How do I want to feel? And athletics, endurance gives us time to sit in that space, like you said, creating that space to think about these things of who do I want to be?
Yeah, wow. Well, and so much of what I've learned, about outcomes is they are a direct reaction to our patterns, right? And we create our own patterns based on the way we feel, which is triggered by the way we think. And so if you're stuck in the same ways of thinking, feeling the same about yourself, your limited self, you're going to be stuck in the same patterns. So it sounds like part of what you're saying is the outdoors and these adventures give people the space to kind of challenge themselves with let me just put the brakes on and think about how do I want to be thinking, which then allows me to then change my patterns consciously and then become somebody different.
May. It may.
May,
It
but at
may.
least the opportunity is there.
And that's all, right? When we're in those big, expansive environments, looking over at a mountain range or at the ocean, and we feel our size go smaller and we're in that awe state, that's when those things that's truly space. That's how
Yeah.
the word originates, in that space of awe. And we start automatically asking ourselves the bigger questions, right? Not who am I in this universe, but more like, there's these thoughts that come up because, again, our brain, our visual can't take in the size and magnitude of it. And so it sort of releases, it lets go, and it can bring up these deeper thoughts.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then let's talk just briefly about the identity, and we'll touch on, we'll see if it goes anywhere, death. So you and I had a conversation the other day, and you brought it up a few minutes ago, which is something I can relate to. As a former athlete, you're kind of taught and trained to size up the competition, look around you, outwork them, and figure out, how do I get to the finish line faster than that person? And that becomes your recipe, your pattern for life. And it's all about the finish line or the scoreboard. Um, but we get to a later part in life where that's a really difficult identity for an athlete to shed. And I know for me, coming into the Grand Canyon, I had to change my perspective about, because I didn't want to try and finish first. That wasn't really what it was about. It was about being immersed in the canyon, finding a way to take every step joyfully. But I had to consciously kill off or invite the death of that former identity that says you've got to be first. You were a college athlete, former this, former that. That's my ego telling me the way I need to approach this. And it really wasn't until I was able to put that to bed and welcome in a new me, a new way of seeing things, where I wasn't trying to get out of the canyon fast. I was trying to stay immersed for as long as I possibly could, with a smile on my face, taking in everything there was to take in: the people, the experience, the masculine, feminine energy of the Grand Canyon itself, and really absorb that. I'm curious if you have any thoughts that come to mind as you're working with either everyday athletes or potentially elite athletes, where you have to kill off, like, for the ego to survive, you have to be able to welcome in the death of your former self if you want to welcome in a new self.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine over the years just how many people I've worked with where their entire identity is based around their athletics, right? um, where we start usually in sport when we're quite young. And as we grow up, as our entire brain even develops from a prefrontal cortex to our identities to our consciousness to everything, has been along this journey where the one constant is working towards an athletic outcome. So that it's a hard thing to shed, right?
Yeah.
But that's the part too that you hopefully come to realize when the athletic, air quotes, career is over. And that is, well, who am I without that identity? And
Right.
what's my self-worth and what's my value? And in a lot of ways, we rebuild that. We do work on that. And the contribution, the self-talk, the inner narrative, and so forth from that. Right. So
Yeah.
there's a very hard transition there for a lot of, especially college athletes. I work with somebody, she's an Olympic swimmer as well, and she created a whole program around that for the NCAA. Imagine a, you know, offensive lineman who will not go pro, who played in the SEC in football in front of 80,000 people every weekend, and the quietness the day after graduation or the day after the final football game, and you're not going pro. You're just, and your entire life was built on this identity. And then the validation for 4 or 5 years on campus, that in front of 80,000 and then another 50,000 students all the time. It is a deep, deep, deep emotional identity death. And rebuilding that identity through things that light you up, that where you find your own interests. And that's what you were saying earlier too, is, do I want that, or do I want to be the type of person that wants that? And those are two
Right.
very different things,
Very different.
right? It's the old, am I climbing the right ladder? But also, is the ladder I'm climbing on the right wall? Right.
Right.
And and I get people all the time, Chris, I want to run my first marathon. I'm like, do you? Right? Or do you want to be the type of person who says they've run their first I thought I should always do this. Well, let's dig a little deeper there. You know,
Yeah.
usually I lose a client then because they're like, "What are
Yeah.
you talking about? I just want to run a marathon, man. Leave me alone. Why'd you come at me with all that deep stuff?" But
Right.
yes, there is a lot of that. And yes, there is identity death. But the beauty is that we can also rebuild a better version in many cases, one that stands on what's my contribution? Who do I want to be in this world?
Right.
And using this thing called athletics, where we feel, especially whether you're an athlete for your entire life or not, there's levers we can pull that we feel as a participant we're in control of. How much I train, what my mindset is for training, how I eat, how I sleep. All those things are levers. And we feel like we're in control, and it allows us to build this identity from scratch. You keep saying elite athletes and beginners. I call it athletes with the most potential. They're the big beginners, right? Because they're going to expand and grow real quickly. They're going to have like huge improvements. And then I call it the athletes with the least potential. They're the elites. They're not going to get much better. There's not much I'm doing to help them. But
Right.
for me, the athletes with the most potential, it's working with a white canvas, right? And being able to introduce them to concepts and insights and guide them through this space of, wait, yeah, is that really how you want to go about it? Or, you know, so that's how it comes up. It also comes up a lot in that we use the athlete identity to then work with how else does this manifest in your life? I'm sure
Right.
you've gotten this feedback before, or I'm sure you've struggled with, let's say, consistency or follow through or type A too much, right?
Or self-sabotage, you
All those
name it.
things. And
Yeah.
we're doing it in this little world, but how we do one thing is how we do everything. And you might not realize it, and you're using a lot of energy to not show that in other avenues of your life. But we both know that energy, it's impossible to maintain.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
a fun exercise I do with a lot of my type A super performative athletes, finish line, and as I make them enter races and they stop before the finish line.
Oh, interesting.
I'm like, you're going to walk off that course at mile 25 of a marathon. And it, right? Or this, every now and then I coach a master swim practice, and I have a couple of, former Olympians in there and NCAA champions, and I'm like, no, we're done now. And they're like, what? What do you mean? Like, I know we still have more. No, right here is perfect. Learn to not fully close the loop. It's fine. We already know you're the type of personality who does an outstanding job in crossing the finish line, in dotting their I's and crossing their T's. That's not the work. The work is unfinished business and recognizing how off kilter you are and what does that actually mean? And then
Uh,
we're starting to work with the identity of, but I'm the type of person who, really? Do you have to be? What are
right.
your values, right? Like, where are we seeing in here? Like, you're still a great dad. You're still a great professional. You're still a great, like, you didn't touch the wall. You didn't cross the finish. Big deal. It's fine. Let go.
Right.
You're not winning. Many of my athletes know.
You're human.
Yeah. I say, guess what? You're not going to win the event.
Right.
You're not going to win that marathon. So it's nobody's looking. So,
Yeah. But
yeah.
it's so hard, to welcome that in. I think the other thing that I think one of the hardest questions in life to answer is, what do you really want? Because we're so trained and so conditioned to answer that question a certain way, we rarely give ourselves the opportunity to really think about it and think, wow, what do I really truly want? And where I help a lot of my clients is move from a place of I should, I have to, I'm supposed to I choose to. In dissolving all those things that make you think I have to do something for some level of expectations that either I have or others, I'm perceiving others have of me, to a place of, really, when it gets to the core of who I am, this is what I choose to do. This is how I choose to show up. Have
Yeah.
you seen, some transitions within some of the athletes that you work with, moving from a place of I have to like cross that finish line to I choose, how I want to show up.
For sure, in different ways, right?
Okay.
Like for many of them, they come to me, they're already masters athletes, right? And I
Yeah.
sort of go through the understanding of what it means. You're doing this because you're choosing to, right? This isn't, we're not taking on a second career here. Don't get me wrong, in triathlon, in the very serious age group space of triathlon, people do it like a career.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
that. And then second of all, there's this growth where they're like, well, maybe I can go pro, or maybe I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes here. Maybe you can. I'm not saying you're not good enough. I'm just saying, is that really what you want? Right.
Yeah.
Because the fun and the joy of being a participant and playing and dabbling in an elite level versus doing it for a profession, that's a different ball game, and it gets very lonely, right? And because
Yeah.
it's when it goes from an outlet to the thing you do, it's a different mindset. But that being said, um, there's a lot of curating and building once they are masters athletes and choosing. I'm always like, well, you're the author of these chapters of your life you're writing, but that comes with responsibility. You can't just make this up. Like, you need to be thoughtful, just like any author writes a book. They write an outline. They sort of know what they want to say in that chapter of their lives, and then they'll write it versus just sort of blindly start writing and not knowing which direction this goes.
Right. Right. Yeah, one of the things you mentioned early on in the call was everybody having their own pace, right? Their own process, and people having to discover that on their own, timeline. Um, for those listening who are considering, like maybe they've never done anything hard in their life, there's a fear factor that goes into that decision or making the commitment. But what advice would you have for anyone that's considering maybe taking on something like a marathon or just a hike on the weekends to kind of free them up? Because I think one of the things that's easy to take away from these great insights you're providing is there's not one prescripted method to get there. You
Mhm.
don't just start doing Rich Roll's
Yeah.
training program. You got to find what makes most sense to you. So as you've trained so many athletes, both the high potential and low potential, like what advice would you give for someone considering maybe jumping in the arena?
Well, the first thing I'll say to that is discomfort will find you. Discomfort always finds us. And the earlier we start deciding, well, I know discomfort is coming for me in an unplanned way, life's events, difficulties, you know, life throwing us curveballs. But what am I doing to prepare myself mentally and physically for when those curveballs are thrown my way? What kind of reps have I put in that allow me to sort of deal with that better? You're not going to deal with it perfectly. That's why it's a curveball. But we do have the opportunity to practice doing hard things in order to become more familiar with who we are when things get hard. And then being able to make those decisions and recognize ourselves and know ourselves when life's unexpected events come at us. I know who I'll be when things get hard because I've done these other hard things. And that's the important thing here. Discomfort will find us either way. And it's different for everybody. My physical discomfort, of course, is different than other people's, but my threshold of mental discomfort might be, you know, completely something random, right? But that's the beauty. Knowing that we've been in discomfort, that we've done hard things, that we've exposed ourselves, and therefore, and it's not necessarily this physical benefit. Again, it's that you want to know who you are in those times. Because when you know who you are, when discomfort finds you, it allows you to make better decisions. It allows you to give energy to others. Wouldn't you know that when things get hard, how I'm going to be for my family, for my friends? how reliable I am. Like, even if you're running around with your head chopped off like some clucking chicken, at least like, I'm not the best person at this, you might say. But
Right.
at least that's a huge win in those moments, right? So fear is based off of three things: uncertainty, right? An uncertain future; discomfort, out of our comfort zone, right? And high stakes. So if you put all three of those things together, that's true fear. Now we're going lizard brain deep in the mind, right? They don't like all three of those things. The human is very bad at uncertainty anyway, but then you throw in high stakes, life, family, career, income, financial, whatever, that becomes something and out of our comfort zone where we are just not who we are. We don't know who we are. Again, discomfort allows us to know what we're like in an uncertain environment, out of our comfort zone, right? And in high stakes, because we create the stakes when we're doing hard things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Uh, Means we could go deep on fear because I think as a human, that is where we live 99% of the time. And it's, based off of past hurt that we've all experienced. And then this future fear of something we don't want, embarrassment, to think we're not good enough, um, which it's crazy how much that is manipulating us to lead the lives that we lead, to carry the identities we're carrying, and how much it's really controlling ourselves.
Protective
Another
mechanisms.
thing, say again.
It's all protective mechanisms. We've built up
Exactly.
protection, whether it's
Yeah.
masks, whether it's walls, whether it's identities. They're all meant to protect us. But we
Yeah.
don't realize we don't need to protect. Our true self has all the powers and capabilities and insights to deal with whatever the dragon throws at us in those moments. But
Right.
because of all those walls, we think we're vulnerable. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, that is so wild. Like, I really do believe and have learned for myself, like, we're all boundless, limitless beings. Like, we came here that way. We learned and created a story in our head about our limitations, which forced us to think different, feel different, create patterns, and then we become something that's a lie. And our ego is trying to prove that the lie is real,
Yep.
and it's exhausting. People are living thinking, I'm not enough, I always fail, or this, that, and the other. And that's one of the things that opens up for me with these hard events. I feel like I went into the Grand Canyon with you, one version of myself. I came out completely different. I've told the story on this conversation before. When I came back home and I looked at the training hill where I was training, that thing was like a little anthill compared to the Grand Canyon. And to know that, in the most difficult hours of the night when we're climbing out and it's pitch black, it's windy, the temperature's dropping, you're shivering, you just think there's no way I'm going to get out of this canyon, except I put one foot in front of the other, bond a little bit with the people that we're there with, and lo and behold, you find the van. And you're like, wow, I did it.
Yep.
And when I came home, I remember feeling, touching on your point about feeling, I felt like all my problems just shrank by a factor of 10. All my perceived obstacles shrank by a factor of 10. All the things in the world just became smaller in comparison to the Grand Canyon. And that was, to me, the beauty of doing an event with you and your group in the Grand Canyon. It's so massive to be immersed in that and come back and realize, this little problem I was worried about, it's nothing.
I think I said when we started, this is a soul cleansing exercise, right? I was
Yeah.
standing there and I was like, when you walk in here today, notice and listen to your soul, because an event like this, an experience, it'll knock the dust off your soul.
Yeah, that's beautiful saying. So, building on the concept of boundless, limitless souls, I've heard and observed a lot of people that do hard events, especially ones like Mount Everest, where they were hoping they were going to find some answer at the top. And they got to the top and they were as far away from human life as they could be on Earth and realized, shoot, the answer's not here. Have you seen and experienced that with other athletes and observed that where they actually learned that the answer is in the journey itself? Like there isn't anything waiting at the top of Everest that's going to blow your mind. Like
There,
you could do it the whole time.
there's nowhere is there going to be that thing, right?
Right.
Um, but here's what I'll say. If I didn't do my job the way I describe coaching, if you're asking that question still at the top, right?
Right.
And,
I'm talking
and
about the poor souls that don't get to work with
yeah,
you.
yeah. But also, I mean, and that's, I think what I'm trying to say with that is we're working with our inner landscape throughout the journey anyway, right? And a lot of this cliche, I don't want to put a negative on it, and process and the journey, and that's where all that, that's true. But if you don't do the work along with it to sort of ask the right questions, the journey can be just as, you know, process oriented, perfectionism, just check up, right? How intentional are you being along the journey? And what kind of accountability of questions and thoughts are you having along the way? Because, man, you only get this once. This is one ride. We get one ride, right? And because you're a master's athlete, because we've left that whole part behind us of winning and, all that, right? It's a different journey. This is different work, right? And don't get me wrong, I often come about this in a lot of conversations. They're like, people are like, yeah, it's easy for you to say, Chris, you got to close chapters on a variety of different athletic identities, and we're still discovering ours. Maybe it's later in life, but we want to find out how good we can be or how far we can take this, and not from a professional standpoint, but even in the endurance space. Well, I want to know after doing a 50K what a 50 miler feels like, and I want to see how far I can push. Absolutely. And I totally will support you on that, but it comes with homework, because my goal is, again, how do you want to feel doing these things? And I'm not talking about physically feel. I feel great and that was such an easy event. No, how do you want to feel? Who do you want to be as a person doing these things? Right. And
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with age or experience. It's just those questions and those thoughts. And don't get me wrong, plenty of athletes are like, you know what, Chris, I'm cool. Just give me a training plan. I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. But then there's plenty where we do have a deeper conversation and we do enjoy this sort of back and forth. And that's the mindset work. I like to say there is one voice we hear our entire lives, from when we sort of really gain consciousness, 4, 5, 6 years old, till the last breath. There's one voice we hear. Don't you want to start working with that voice instead of it being negative and a chatter and energy drain and you're trying to swat it off your shoulder and fight it? No, this is about a dance. This is about understanding and knowing how to listen and take the input or not take the input, right? Like, I appreciate it. I don't need you right now, fear. I'm good, right? I don't need you right now, self-deprecating voice, right? I'm good. Thanks for the input. I might need you again next week when something else comes up, but for now, I'm good, right? And that's the part, again, athletics gives us quiet time out there to do this type of thinking and like wondering.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to remind those who are tuning in, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. If you'd like, we can bring you up on stage. Jason can bring you on stage and you can interact directly with Chris. It's an amazing opportunity if you'd like to take advantage. So I'll throw that out there. We have about 19 minutes left. And while we're waiting for people to log their own questions, let's talk quickly about one of the books that you recommended to me 1 year ago to the day The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life,
Love it.
which left a massive imprint on me. That was, if you get nothing more from the book than the motto of the Lion Tracker, which is, I have no idea where I'm going, but I know exactly how I'm going to get there. You shared that book with me. It certainly changed my life. But what does that book bring up for you?
That's a good question. It's my most recommended book, because it's short and it's so to the point. And Boyd Vardy really writes again about nature, about energy, about this conflict between who we evolved to be out there in nature and this conflict of who we are in today's fast-paced, non-nature, non-community society, right? And that we're sort of stuck in our own world versus everything we need in life is out there, just available to us. There's a lot of psychology, philosophy, life coaching in it. Boyd Vardy is a life coach, studied under Martha Beck, who's also pretty amazing in her entire approach and her writing. So there was just a lot that resonated with me because, again, it connects the outdoors with the inner landscape. And that's sort of the biggest thing. And what we are lucky with endurance training, because you automatically have to be out there to do it, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the mountain company Stio has the motto "Let the outdoors in," or something like "Let the outside in." And I'm actually the other way around. I'm like, let the inside out. Let your inner landscape come out, come alive, and sort of have a bigger voice in who you are.
Yeah. That reminds me of St. Thomas. Let
Aquinas?
what's within you. If you don't let it out, it'll derail you. If you let it out,
It
it'll
will
completely
fester.
free
It
you.
will fester into negative energy. And,
Right.
the who you're meant to be and, your true self.
Yeah. So for those who don't know the whole premise of the book, it's The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life is about these lion trackers from South Africa. Kind of the quick summary is, by paying attention to that first track and really heightening your awareness, not just noticing the track, but when you get really immersed into the track, these lion trackers can actually tell if this lion was under stress, if he was meandering, looking for a drink of water, or on the hunt, or maybe running for their life. But by looking at the track, fully immersing themselves, they have the best chance at understanding where to look for the next track. And in life, we're all presented with those moments where we go, oh, something sounded really good that guy said. I'm going to dive in and really see what's there for me, explore it, and see if I can't pick up the next track on where I could go, with my life. And I remember a vivid memory. The first time I ever met Jesse, he was on stage in Salt Lake City, and I saw him put the one arm up about, your net worth, and the other arm about your soul. And if you had zero soul, but you've got $1 billion, you got nothing. And I was moved to tears watching him, met him backstage, and I was like, one of those lion tracks. I don't know what's here, but I want to explore this more. And it led me to people like you, to these amazing events, to an amazing community of people. Like, that was one of those major tracks that I found in life that has helped guide me to where I wanted to go and lead a more expansive life.
And that's
Um,
also the part of what comes out of that book, and in general, which I love, is I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there, means our soul, our inner self, is actually guiding. We
yeah,
think we're in control, but the inner self just sort of sits back and goes, you know what? It might take you a little bit, but you're going to get there eventually. But you can fight me on this, but I'll just wait, because eventually you're going to be presented with enough of the whisper, right? As in the hero's journey, that you hear the whisper, that you hear it enough, it becomes a yell, and it becomes more and more obvious. But You don't want to waste that time, right? And it's not necessarily time wasted in a traditional sense because you're going through life's experiences that continue to lead you where you didn't know you needed to go. But listen for the whisper.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will it's there. It's kind of like where we opened this conversation. If you create the space for it,
Yeah,
you'll start hearing it.
sorry to interrupt there, but the only, from what I know, the only other way other than listening for it is when it's shocked into you with a traumatic experience,
True.
right? Where
Yeah.
something rattles yourself, your core, your soul, your inner being, your energy, whatever you want to call it, so much that you're like, okay, what am I doing?
Right.
And so sure, we don't want to spend our life waiting for that. That doesn't sound very nice. So therefore, hence, let's try to listen. Let's try to
Yeah.
increase that time, that training. Again, it's training to learn to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think unfortunately, most people do have that kind of slap you in the face moment where life kind of knocks you around a little and you go, man, maybe I am fighting these waves of energy a little too hard in the wrong direction. If I could just learn to stand up and accept the wave, maybe my life would be a little more in flow and I could pick up on all this free energy, which is what Joe Jacoby writes about, monthly in his newsletter is find all the free energy in the universe and let it work for you. I feel like I spent a lot of my time in life battling against the waves, trying to reach certain destinations that maybe just weren't meant for me, but my ego sure thought we could get there. And the harder it got, the more stronger I thought my willpower would be. When I realized I could just stand up and write it, I started meeting like incredible people, having these amazing synchronicities. And you do realize that there is a lot of free energy. There's a wave, call it whatever you want, your own life force that is there for you if you're willing to just stand up and accept it.
And there's multiple ways to get that destination. There's
Right.
not just that direct path. And we're so conditioned to try to take this direct path. And oftentimes, the non direct path, any sailor will tell you if you're going from point A to point B, you're not always going to have a nice tailwind. You might have to tack a lot to get there, right? But like you're saying, harness the wind, right? Harness the wind and allow, and again, that's the trust. And I guess that's a big component of what we're talking about in the self belief that I will figure it out. And
Right.
whether it's doing hard things and you keep learning in doing hard things that you get the self belief that I figured it out or that I will do it, to the self belief in a lot of ways. It's just just those reps of hearing that and understanding that and continuing to build on that. I have a big, you know, theory, whatever we want to call it right now, but that it's the concept of a lighthouse. I want to emanate energy, safety, security, confidence, steadfast, reliability, consistency. A lighthouse stands in the storm, but also stands in good weather. And it has the same sense of projection and reliability and all the adjectives we can throw at it. Be the lighthouse. But how do
Yeah.
you become the lighthouse? You have to have that self-belief. You have to have gone through the iterations. Those sailors, in the storm, they have to have seen it in order to now trust it and believe it and now conditioned to, oh, okay, that's someplace for security and safety.
Yeah. That just reminds me, just in choosing how you're showing up, just saying, I'm going to be so free with myself that I can make room for you however you're showing up. I don't have the need to change you, whether that's your partner, whether that's any of your friends. You just be you, and I'm good with that. Then let's go climb something big together and get to know each other, a little bit better.
Yeah.
This is everything that Joe Jacoby talks about. Joe, I'd love to welcome you to the stage if you're up for it and you have any kind of questions for Chris. But he writes about, capturing this free energy, the wind, the waves. He's into riding waves now in his paddle, or in his boat. So Joe, would love to hear if you have any questions or comments after hearing Chris talk for a while.
This is fantastic. Chris, I've heard you on a lot of podcasts, including your own. This is my single favorite, most conversation with you that I've heard yet. And I think just a couple observations I just wanted to make that I think for people that are listening, and I think, you made a reference to kind of the image of a coach with the whistle around the neck. And I think what you're showing us about your style of coaching and guiding and mentoring is that uh, this is like magic, like helping people to get out of their heads and more into their heart and into their gut, like full body performance is really what you're talking about here. I love the redefinition of the athletes with the most potential and athletes with the least potential. uh, Interestingly, I really like the idea about stopping short of of maybe a planned workout. One of my favorite essays I read about Ernest Hemingway was about his writing process, how sometimes he would get tired and instead of finishing the chapter or the paragraph or even the sentence, he'd put the pencil down mid sentence and go to sleep. And like it takes you have to kind of work with yourself in a certain way to be able to do that. But he also believed by doing that he would go to sleep and his body and his mind and brain would sort of work together while he was sleeping to wake up with more direction in what he ultimately wanted to do and how he wanted to finish the rest of that sentence and the rest of that paragraph and the rest of that chapter. And I just love this approach to thinking about performance. That the last thing that I'll just say, and see if some of the others want to chime in this conversation. We've mentioned the word identity a few times. I think a lot of the magic in what you bring, Chris, is that you speak about those identities, but almost in a way that just kind of reduces the identity down to just something simple. Again, it just comes back to that connection to self. Like if the connection to self, the intrinsic motivation, that relationship with your resistance, with your clarity, and really what you want out of it, man, you can put all the externals on it that you want, but just something is going to get lost in that process. And I've loved the entire hour, and I just kind of wanted to share a few of these reflections with you and how wonderful this conversation is. I'm grateful to be have a sideline pass to it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
I'm just happy we could bring together two Barcelona Olympians and let them connect online.
We'll talk about our Las Ramblas stories after. That being said, like where we just left that with being good enough, that's also part of not finishing something, right? That what Joe just reminded us of like it's good to not finish something because I stand strong enough in myself to know that I don't need to touch the wall or cross that arbitrary black line somebody put on the road called the finish line. Like that's not my self-worth. I know what I'm capable of, and that's the goal, right? That you feel that.
One of the things I tell one of my mantras for a living is I call it start lines over finish lines. The most important line that you can move across every day is the start line, not the finish line. And actually making that, like we have a way, you know how sometimes in society we sort of put down that person, oh yeah, that guy is always starting things. Like that's a bad thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly the person I want to know better. The person who's starting more things, not finishing more things. I feel like there's going to be one finish line in our lives, and we will know it when we get there and not a moment before. Everything else is just about going across the start line. And that has been a really helpful mantra for me over the years.
I love that. I love that, Mel. Or
Yeah, that's
creating
so
your
good.
own finish line, right? And a lot of athletes and Sandy knows this, I ask them, well, what do you want out of the next adventure? And let's build your own finish line. Like what's going to be at that finish line? And what sacrifices are you willing to make for that finish line and what not? What's not what doesn't fall into that picture? Because a lot of times, Joe, you know this as we're going down deeper and deeper into the intensity of training we make sacrifices along the way that in the beginning we wouldn't have made,
Yeah.
right? When it comes to family or time or things like that, but we're so far in it that you're like, this isn't the person I want to be.
Chris, maybe I can ask one question because I think you touched on something. I'm curious because you coach people that, I mean, that are interested in taking on challenges. And I love that you're getting in why they want to take on the challenges. But assuming that you and the client agree, like, okay, we're in, this is a collaboration. But a lot of the collaborations you seem to coach, these are not for the faint of heart. They take a lot of time. What do the conversations look like with the people who have family, the ones, that are married, have partners, have children? Maybe you could riff on that a little bit, because I think we don't really talk about that very often in these super amazing challenges that people are doing, but there's a lot of people around them that aren't taking on that challenge. What are your conversations with those people look like?
Yeah, I mean, in the more serious space, I have them do an athlete mission statement, where we write out what are the things, where are the guardrails, what am I willing to sacrifice, what am I not. But it comes with their own responsibilities too. Don't you tell me you didn't get up at 5 a.m. to get that workout in so that you can be at your 9 o'clock soccer game for your child. That's on you. And so you're making those choices right now. That's not the athlete's mindset. The athlete's mindset, because then your wife or your husband, whatever the athlete is, will then see, you know what? This person is keeping their word, not only to the family, but to themselves. The support grows exponentially when you keep your word to the athlete mission statement on why you're doing this and how you're not willing to sacrifice certain things like family and kids, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is consistency, and over time builds the fitness. If you're going, the bigger the adventure, the earlier we need to start, because that's not how life works. There's no crash training for an endurance event, right? You can get by, but that's not why you're doing this. If you signed up to just get by, again, I'm not the right guy for that. But that being said, we start earlier so that we don't need to have these huge training weeks, but consistency over time negates that need for big hours, right? And then it's a constant check-in. Like, how are things going? Like, how are you doing? And where are we on this highway towards the desired outcome? Do we need to get off and build a wedge week here? What I call a wedge week, where it's like, all right, you know what? Go spend time with it. This week. We've been training consistently for so long. You're fine. Take a week off. Go hang with the family. Let go. Right? You don't need the perfect training plan. Like, that's what training plans, unfortunately, are so bad at. That individual aspect of the person's needs within a family, within their own soul, of a chat GPT can't do that for you.
Mm.
A magazine or a book or an online training plan can't do that for you and let you know what, you're good. I've seen this before. You're totally fine. And I will have you ready. Do not worry. That's my job. Right. The
Yeah.
other component there, last thing I'll say to that is, it's important that the athlete does it for a selfish reason. And this is, you're going to be like, what? This constant, I want to show my kids that I can do hard things. No, you're not getting away with that one.
Yeah.
I want to prove, no, you're not. There's a deeper why, and we will find it before we start training. Because when you need to get up at 5 a.m. and you're exhausted, your kids aren't up yet. They're not going to see the difficulty. They're not going to hear the internal narrative. You need a deeper why, right? This isn't just habit, like being a little kid growing up. This is just what I do. We swim at 5 a.m. or we train at this. No, you're an adult now. And I want to understand, is it validation? Is it something you've always missed? Is it something your parents said you can't do? Is it like there's a lot of deeper questions in this stuff? And back to you, Sandy, it allows me to start having that deeper conversation. Now we've identified something. Now start training and let's notice what comes up over the next 6 months.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. To me, two things come up before we close out, and that is, one of the biggest keys that I've learned on living a more expansive life is number one, responsibility. It's taking full responsibility that the only person that matters is me. If I can show up, if I can make these commitments and follow through for myself, not for my kids or anyone else, then I make room for everybody else. Like I become everything I've wanted to be, but it's responsibility. And it's not being a victim. It's not portraying everything as everybody else's fault or the weather or, what have you. But if you take nothing else away other than just taking responsibility, and it's such a deep, I know we brush off, we say that a lot in society, but we kind of brush it off. Really taking it. I use a framework for myself, Chris, that's been unbelievably powerful. And that is that life will present you with people and circumstances to show you where you're not free. And it helps you realize that there is no problem with anybody. It's your relationship to what they're doing that is the problem. Your relationship with the hill that's in front of you. The hill isn't your enemy. It's just there. Just like everything. So, changing that relationship, but it all starts with responsibility. So being the responsible host, we're now 2 minutes over. I know everyone's got busy days, but Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day. I know how precious that is. It's not lost on me, that you gave the time and everything you've given to me over the past year. I'd love to, in front of everybody, just tell you how incredibly grateful I am for you, the insights you've shared with me and our audience. And then Joe, thank you for chiming in. Again, I couldn't be happier to put two Barcelona, I feel like Sesame Street. Two of these guys are saying the same things and one's not the same. I'm the odd man out.
2 water sports too. I love it.
I know, it's amazing. Well, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for taking time out of your day to join in. This has been a really insightful, meaningful conversation, Chris. So thank you so much for going deep, being a little vulnerable, and helping to share your insights with everybody. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks for watching an Expansive Life Conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week.